Hi guys, welcome back to another episode. Hopefully, as you've seen in my little short, the engine is now running. It took quite a lot of figuring out to get to that point. Bit of trial and error and such like. Had one very helpful post from a guy called Martin on the Disco 3 forum, which helped me in the right direction, which is good. So basically it was just, to start off, if I couldn't get it to crank at all on the key. If I bypassed the relay, I could get it to crank, turn over, it was fine, but it wouldn't do anything on the key. So from looking at all the wiring diagrams and stuff, I figured out the park neutral switch, which basically an inhibitor in the auto stops you from starting it if it's in any drive gears. So obviously I knew I had that to contend with. On the petrol V8 auto, it is just a very, very basic switch, doesn't communicate with anything, it just goes straight to the relay. For some reason on the diesel autos, it does actually go to the ECU first, so that would get a bit more tricky. But basically, look at all the things. There was you've got positive main feed from the ignition to your relay for your starter. So I had a measure of the existing wiring on the V8 auto, and it looked like it went to ground when it was in park. So I was like, that's fine. So I grounded the wire. Managed to get it to turn over by bypassing the relay. So I was like, right, obviously in the right direction, but for some reason it wouldn't start on the key. So I was like, well, it's obviously that the ECU's not sending out the signal and stuff. So did a bit of looking, plugged my code reader in, IOD tool, and got some of the values, and I could see that the ECU was sending an on signal for the starter relay, but obviously that wasn't getting there for some reason. Very helpful guy on Disco 3 forum said that the park neutral switch should actually be to 12 volts, and that gives a 12 volt signal to the relay, and then the ECU actually grounds the other side. It doesn't provide a positive feed, which makes a lot of sense. So what I've done is I've managed to bridge two wires in the plug for the thing, much the same as I did with the canvas loom, and that then meant it turned over on the key. The next thing was to get it to actually start. So because this has got LPG kit on it, the way the LPG kit works is some signals it takes as a piggyback from existing wiring, so it literally just piggybacks off the wiring. Other signals and stuff it actually interrupts. So for instance, it's got a pickup wire that comes off the coil, one of the coils, that then gives it a signal for when it's firing, but the injector wiring is actually interrupted. So the wiring for the injectors goes through the LPG ECU and then back out. So the LPG ECU can turn those injectors on or off depending on whether it's on LPG or whether it's on petrol. So now I had it cranking over on the key, I decided to basically reinstate temporarily as much of the LPG loom as I sensibly could. So it's got the main ECU, it's got a small 5 amp feed from one of the plugs on the loom. That basically just gives it a signal when to turn on. Turn on the main system. It has two main high-ish, they're not high current, feeds directly from the fuse box. It also has an interrupted wire from the main plug on the ECU from the engine side. So it splices into one of it cuts the wire and again goes through the LPG ECU and then back into the loom, so it is an interrupted signal. And then there's a canvas piggyback, which used to go to the OBD port. It was just on the old car, was soldered into the canvas wires in the OBD port. But I figured out, you know, while all the wiring's here, I don't want to be poking excess wires through the bulkhead, because that gets difficult and you're asking for water ingress and stuff like that. I am still going to have to poke some more through for the LPG button, but hopefully the rest of it I can actually keep engine side. But because I did my canvas bridge here, I had you know, it's not high and low, but you know, positive and negative, as it were, of the canvas here already terminated, ready for wires, and then just an extra ground. So actually, out of this plug, I've used quite a few of the wires. So you've got canvas, positive and negative from the off to the LPG ECU, ground for that canvas setup. So this is the wire. So you've got orange and green, which is pin 9, I believe, 8. Pin 8 is then bridged to pin 6, which is a thick green with a white tracer. That is a 12 volt feed that would normally go to the transmission control unit. And that's it for now. I think I'm going to leave these wires long, because there could well be some, whether it be power feeds or signals feeds or something, that I can feed into this to try and get the errors regarding to the missing transmission unit off, basically. So I'm going to leave those long, tape all that up, make it nice, make these connections a bit nicer, and then tidy all this up a little bit. Some of the wiring, a lot of this wiring, certainly with the LPG system, is only temporary, because I wanted to just see if it works before I went actually final fitting anything. It does. It now starts on the key. It took quite a lot of cranking, so I can only assume it's because I've put some fresh fuel in it, but there was some old fuel in the tank and stuff, so I think the fuel is probably a little bit past it. I was getting a little bit worried that the trigger pattern on the flywheel wasn't quite right, because it would crank, it almost fire, and then not, and then almost fire a little bit, and then not, and it was just like the timing was out. I was like, oh, you know, I spent a lot of time and effort trying to make sure that that trigger pattern was as close to exactly the same as the original, and then so I just kept persevering, put a second battery on to give it a bit more juice. Tried another couple of times, and then it fired up. Idle a little bit high, but it's extremely cold. I mean, it's -4 at the moment. Extremely cold. There's no coolant in it. It knows it's got no coolant because there's no expansion tank, so it knows the coolant level is low. And there's a couple of other sensors that just aren't plugged in and stuff, so it's going to be a little bit high. And yeah, it was, but it runs, and it ran fine. I could rev it a little bit with the throttle. I didn't want to run it for long because it didn't have any water in it, so I only ran it for about 15 seconds. But it proves that it works. I was getting an RPM signal from it, so and I did a test where I disconnected the trigger pickup from the flywheel, and you get no RPM signal, so the RPM is taken from that and not from the cam sensor. So yeah, overall really happy with it. Sounds really nice. Nowhere near as loud as I thought it was going to be. So at the moment we've just got the cats, nothing else. So yeah, it was a bit quieter than I thought it was going to be, but that's probably not necessarily a bad thing. So my plan exhaust wise is I've got the cats with downpipes with cats in them. So basically I'm going to be doing a silencer and resonator delete, so there will be just 2 straight pipes. Hopefully I'm going to try and put in an X pipe in there, but then that will go to I'm then retaining the standard rear silencers, for now, just because I've got them. They're tricky bits to make, so that's all back on. So I've just got to order 2 short lengths of pipe to replace the bit in the middle, and then so hopefully it should have a nice bearable but not be mega loud, and we'll see how we go from there. Yeah, I want it to sound nice. You know, it's costing a lot of money. It's going to cost a lot of money to run. I want it to sound nice. So the TDV6 straight pipe sounded really good. So I you know, I quite like the slightly noisier exhaust. So yeah, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and tidy up some of the wiring, but mainly concentrate on getting the coolant side of things together, so that I can run it for a bit longer, so I can do some more checks on it, check some of the sensor outputs, check it warms up nicely, get some warmth into it, and see that idle comes down to a sensible idle, and just check that I haven't got any other errors, and yeah, just see that it works before I go, you know, too crazy bolting everything back together and then realise I've got a problem. So that's my plan, hopefully sort of today, is to try and get most of that back together. I say it is -4, I've got to be really careful with filling it up and obviously topping it up. I can't do any testing with no antifreeze, so I've got to put antifreeze in it from the get-go. Normally with something like this I'd put just normal water in it to test it, you know, get it up to pressure and everything like that, make sure there's no leaks, because obviously you're then not wasting antifreeze and stuff like that. But because it is so cold now, I've just got to go with antifreeze from the get-go. I can't risk it freezing at all, so but that's fine. Annoyingly, so I've got a new oil cooler coming. It was supposed to be here by Friday, but it wasn't because the lug snapped off. I was umming and ahhing as to whether or not to change it, because there's a little bit of a weep, signs of antifreeze from around this side, so I was umming and ahhing as to whether or not to change it. Then that broke off. I was like, right, I'm definitely changing it. So but annoyingly it hasn't turned up, so yeah, we'll see how far I get, but I can always loop the pipes for those anyway. I've got to actually make new pipes for these because they were very corroded and split, so they've been removed, but it turns out you can buy the pipe, but it's a whole pipe that does all that, and it's about 150 quid, and it's completely out of stock, and this sort of thing that probably means it's not going to come back in stock, so I'm going to have to make some hoses there. I've still got a load of the old diesel hoses and some other hoses, and I've also got a load of standard heater hose, so I'm hoping with that lot I should be able to make something work, even if only temporary, until I can get hold of the proper pipes. But yeah, so I've got to figure out the power steering setup. So again, the power steering lines on the V8 were heavily corroded. They snapped coming out of the rack on the other car, and just really bad. I wouldn't trust them anyway, so I've decided to leave the TDV6 hoses on, but also I've got the V8 power steering pump. Looks like the fittings are the same, but the pipe work is definitely different, so hopefully I can make something work here that clears everything. If not, then it's going to be a bit of a pain. I'm probably going to have some custom lines made up for the high pressure side and stuff, but I think, looking at it, I think I should be able to make it work, so fingers crossed that all works and doesn't cause too much issue. But yeah, so now I'm going to try and get the rad in and just start plugging away at connecting hoses and try and get some water in it. So thank you for watching, and hopefully on the next one we'll have it running a little bit longer, be able to, you know, rev it a little bit and get some warmth into it. So stay tuned, don't forget to like, comment if you want to see anything, you've got any any pointers, anything like that, or if you want to see anything specific, then just let me know. And yeah, obviously don't forget to subscribe. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.